something in your life is asking you for something in your life is asking for your attention right now. Maybe it's a shorter temper than usual, sleep that's never quite restorative, or a friend who gently says, "You seem different lately." Most of us don't act on signals like that. We wait until they turn to something we can't ignore anymore. Today isn't just about learning to notice those signals. It's about what to actually do the moment you catch one. Using an approach that works, whether what you're carrying shows up as stress, grief, exhaustion, or something you can't quite name yet. Joining us is Sweta Vikram, an Ayurvedic practitioner, trauma-informed yoga teacher, certified grief coach, adjunct professor, and author of 15 books, who is a professional speaker on leadership and well-being. Her entire approach is built on one idea: your body is always talking. Most of us were just never taught how to listen or what to do once we do it. Sveta, question for you as we get started. So many people sense that something is off long before they can name it. Before we get into the specifics of what to do, what do you wish most people understood about that feeling?
So firstly, thank you for having me on this podcast. It's great to be talking to you all. And that's such a great question because people have been taught to not pay attention to themselves. It's indulgent. You pay attention when you're sick, when you're in bed, when you're on meds. But all of that, in many cases, could be eliminated if they just started connecting with themselves, Tim. Something feels off. Just even paying attention to something feels off. That could be a starting point. Because the body is talking before it screams. It's telling us things. It's whispering. Pay attention to it. It's not self-indulgent. You cannot pour from an empty cup.
And so we're going to take that and build upon that. But right now, I want to remind people viewing and listening, you're watching WellWaveNOW, where timeless wisdom lights your wellness path.
Yeah, and most people don't think about their body as something that is communicating with them until it's an intense feeling or it's just absolutely a crisis, right? So before we get into what these signals actually look like, Sweta, why does your body even send signals? Is it some kind of a protection or a warning? What is that signal sending?
So we've gotten so used to external validation and the noise that we don't listen to what's closest to us. The relationship that we have with the body is the longest we'll ever have. And basically, it's your body. It's like a parent, right? Trying to tell you, like, yeah, don't do drunk driving. Maybe don't be friends with this person who's always getting into trouble until you're an adult and you know how to navigate it. It's what all your body's doing. It's communicating. It's trying to warn you. It's trying to protect you because, this is a cliche, but I really believe this is one of those cliches which is true. A body is a temple, or whatever place of worship, the cliche is a body is a temple. And so it's just wanting you to be safe and protected. And that's why, most people don't just wake up one day and say, I have 106 fever, right? There have been signs and symptoms. There have been something that the body is trying to tell them. And when they don't listen, the body screams because it's been there. It's been like that caring parent trying to warn you. Don't wait until the last minute. Don't wait until you just can't move or you miss the bus. So body in the same way or similar way is just trying to look out for us.
When we did our backstory with you, you described a client whose own children were having to walk on eggshells around them as the signal that their depletion had become visible to everyone but themselves, right? And what are 2 or 3 signals like that seem small or easy or could be explained away that people really should actually pay attention to?
Absolutely. So I'll break it down into 2. One is behavioral, right? Mom is pissed again. Don't go near dad. The Patriots. Okay, my husband loves the Patriots. That's the first team I could think of. They lost the football game today. Don't go near him. So he's going to be pissed. At work, people might be like, you know what? Let's just let it be. I don't think I want to go into a meeting alone with this person. So that's one sign where people are walking on eggshells. But even as an individual, it's always coming back to the self. Don't wait for a third party, even if it's your partner or children, to tell you something is off. If you spill a cup of coffee, if you, a lamp breaks, what is your reaction to it? A simple inconvenience, if it's blown out of proportion, that's again a sign something is off. You're a human being. You will spill things, break things, right? And it's important to also feel, oh, shucks, the mess. But if it's just oh my God, I never get it right. You never get it right. See, how my body language, the speed, all of that is changing. So it's important to check in with self. That could be a sign.
And then, Dr. Bob, a query for you. Sveta talked about a couple of behavioral things and other reactions. In your work and as you've seen things, how often do those early signals show up as a physical symptoms before something's finally, sometimes years before somebody is physically diagnosed?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really challenging topic that Speeta is talking about, because most people have no clue what they even should be paying attention to in their bodies. And I know from my days playing college football, we just ran full speed, and it's like running full speed into brick walls, and we were not expected to feel anything. And I think people go through life as battering rams, and they think they have to not feel anything or not pay attention to anything. And I don't think people are educated on what to pay attention to. I think that's a really big issue. And because people can be trained on how to pay attention, but it's not something we're taught. It's like we're not taught, when we go to school, we're not taught how to balance even a checkbook. We're not taught what to pay attention to. Yeah, it takes so many decades for the physical ill health to really surface after years of not noticing what's going on. I mean, and experiencing the stress of life and anxiety and whatever else is going on, miscommunication in relationships. There's so many different variables that feed into the lack of awareness that people have. And so, it's like somebody who smokes cigarettes for 50 years and, they get lung cancer after 50 years, but they don't get it at year 1 or 2. So it takes a long time, I think, for symptoms to show up that are brewing in the background because people don't know how to, let's just say, listen to their bodies as Sveta.
Okay. Sveta, so whether it's the physical or whether it's behavioral or something else there, how do you recommend people address these things? And how can you tell the difference between when they're actually addressing what they're carrying or whether they're just muscling through and saying, I'm great because of the resilience they built up in themselves a little bit?
I think resilience and endurance are two separate things, right? So if you're looking at resilience, and I'm approaching it from a holistic perspective, right? There needs to be sort of like a reset. Okay, this is a busy phase for me. Resilience would be at the end of this phase, I know how to reset, whether it's getting back on my sleep, getting back on track for my sleep. How does my digestion feel? How's my mood? Even being able to openly communicate with your partner or peers saying, this is a phase, things feel intense. To me, that is resilience. You bouncing back, the bounce back is there. But for a lot of people, when, what Dr. Bob was saying, they don't listen to themselves and they think or they believe, or maybe they just don't know better. This is how they need to be: survival mode. You burn out, you're sick, on meds, you rest, then you burn out. So the initiative, that self-voice, that awareness, either they choose not to implement it or they really don't know the difference.
I think people don't know, or if they have some awareness of it, they have no clue how to move beyond it because they're stuck in automatic patterns their whole entire lives.
Guess what I want our audience to understand is that they may think that they're not getting a signal, right? That they're just having a rough day. So what's the one question that someone should ask themselves to define, hey, that's a signal, pay attention?
I love the framing of that. So it could be like, okay, I'm tired. I've come back from work. Media tells me I need to pour myself a glass of wine or open a bottle of beer. It's an occasional thing. But if that bottle becomes 2 bottles and this habit goes on for 15 days, I'm just making up a number, right? Then something is off if that's not been your normal. If every now and then, like we have a heat wave in New York right now, I know my sleep is going to be impacted because my body is not ready for being hit with all of this heat, right? So that's a different situation. But all of a sudden, if you're like, you know what? I haven't been able to sleep for more than 2 hours for 15 days in a row. That's your alarm. A few days is an aberration. But if it becomes your new normal, digestion feels off. Hey, I'm bloated. I'm reacting to these foods. This is TMI, but if someone says, I haven't had a bowel elimination for 4 days, if you're eating 3 meals a day and you haven't gone to the bathroom, that's toxicity created inside your body. Check in. Something is off. We are made differently, right? So for this, especially for anyone whose personality leans more into scientific evidence-based. It's not just my mood is feeling off. It's no, I haven't been sleeping. I'm drinking too much coffee. I still can't come back from that. And that starts becoming the new normal. I think that's when it's time to really get help.
Okay. So the signals are usually there, and
They always.
they're always there. And there's a real difference between hearing them and just pushing through them, or just saying, "Oh, this is just another bad digestion issue or something."
Right, because it's easier to do that, Brett. It's not easy getting a doctor's appointment, asking for the day off. So you feel like, oh, let me drink that one extra cup of coffee. I can power through. And we end up paying a price for that eventually.
So now that kind of aligns with even a harder question, right? Is why some people who seem to be really capable, they're really on top of their game, are the least likely to notice that they are having signals. And before we get into that, a brief message for our audience here. If you are looking for practical ways to support your health beyond today's conversation, take a look at some of the solutions we personally use and recommend. Brain IQ Pain Eraser Roll-On, used by our very own Tim Daniels. After years of knee damage as a D1 athlete and an avid exerciser, he gets relief with Brain IQ Pain Eraser. It delivers instant targeted relief using advanced nanotechnology combined with powerful natural ingredients that absorb quickly right where you need them. No pills, no mess, just roll it on and get back to moving. It's ideal for your lower back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, joint discomfort, or everyday aches and pains, making it a great option for active adults, busy professionals, or anyone tired of pain just slowing them down. Try it for yourself and experience fast, targeted relief with Brain IQ Pain Eraser Roll-On. We'll leave a link in the show notes for you. In this next segment of the show, why we miss our own signals. So if the signals are always there, why do some people who seem most capable often miss them?
And so, Sweta, within that, I want to say, let's take one area of those most capable people. That's like high achievers, and you work with many of them, and they appear to have everything under control. Why do high achievers so often, those high achievers like Dr. Bob, who claims to be so in tune with himself, why are they often the least likely to recognize their own depletion?
Multiple reasons. And I love that question, first of all, Tim. And I didn't realize we were doing a roast, Dr. Bob. So I think we are all high achievers in this room. And if you were to look at your own selves and not answer this question, the problem with being a high achiever is twofold, right? You think you've got a never-ending stock of energy, oomph, enthusiasm, all of that. And you've always, as high achievers, they've never been trained to lean into pausing, because the busyness is thought of as worthiness. Productivity is thought of as worthiness. So that's one big reason. And another reason is other people lean onto them. So there is this lack of visibility where a high achiever doesn't see themselves as someone who needs help because they've got it done. They don't trust somebody else will do it as well as they do it. And other people also don't see them as someone who needs help because they've got everything. It appears at least like, they've got everything put together so beautifully or energetically, whatever have you. That's one of the reasons. When Breck was talking about your story, Tim, and something that I was thinking of, like, even for you, you keep going, it's, I can do just a little bit more and then I can rest. And I'm just assuming here because I've been there. It's like just a little bit more. I don't think when someone has a broken ankle, they're like, I'll go do this. No, it's just a little bit pain. I can push myself. And that's a high achiever, right? Because there is lack of education that Dr. Bob touched upon, where the lack of awareness, where you don't know, am I being weak by admitting I need help or do I really need help? And because they don't pause to check in, that's an issue. And the other one is people always lean on them. So where do you turn to? Who do you go to when everybody else leans on you and doesn't see that you might need help as well?
Good. Thanks for that. So, one part of that, you said, let's do a little bit more. And that is often a characteristic of high achievers. And sometimes, I guess related to that, or I'm going to relate it to that anyway. You've talked about in other discussions with us, that guilt that shows up the moment that someone actually tries to rest. It's almost like, rest has to be earned first by some people. Where do you think that belief comes from, and what does it cost people who carry that belief?
I think it's cultural. It's a very modern way of thinking, unfortunately, across the globe. Like if you live in urban spaces, everyone around you is already constantly doing, never being. So the pressure is on. When you pause, you feel am I being a slacker? Because the language around rest is very much, it has to be earned. It's something that you do when you're sick. It's not curated into the calendar. So it's these perceptions and the stories that we've been told. And something that I touched upon earlier, busyness is tied into people's worthiness. How productive they are is tied into their worthiness. So they think if I'm resting, I'm not doing my bit. I'm not good enough. I've lost my mojo. The number of clients who tell me like, but if I pause, then will I lose it? I was one of them. I was like, no, actually you bounce back. You come back sharper, more grounded, and you work from a place of calm versus chaos.
So, for what actually is happening to the nervous system when someone, lives in that fight or flight or freeze state for months or even years at a time?
Dysregulated. Look at the world around us, Breck. A large majority of people are dysregulated. And what I mean by that is the sleep is impacted, the breathing is impacted, mental health is impacted, your digestion is impacted. As a result of this, our relationships, our career, everything gets impacted, right? It's important. So the two things that I want to touch upon, sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic. Sympathetic nervous system is very important. You're crossing the street. There's a car, that doesn't hit the brake at the red lights. If you stand there freezing, hoping like God will save you, miracles don't happen every day. That's your sympathetic nervous system. You know what? No, maybe I need to run, cross, whatever have you. Or you go hiking. I'm a big hiker and, there's snakes in the woods. You run. Or there are bears. You need to know what to do. That is survival. But if you go through the day thinking you need to survive, you need to protect yourself, see how the speed at which I talk changes. So you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And that's a huge issue because then the world is hurting and a lot of people are sick because we are in that survival mode. And to come out of it is when we rest and digest and we tell our bodies we are safe. Because right now, when we are in that survival mode constantly, then when I say the nervous system is dysregulated, a simple translation to that is your body doesn't think it's safe. So it's doing everything to make sure, because remember, the body wants to protect you, to keep you safe. And that doesn't mean it's working in your favor.
Yeah. Dr. Bob, I hear you talk a lot about the nervous system and the sympathetic. What if you're chronically in that sympathetic, you're in that state for a really long period of time? What is that doing to you? And just in simple terms, how long can somebody even stay in that state without having some kind of long-term damage?
Can't stay in that state. What you said at the end there, you can't stay in that state without having long-term damage. You can't, but you can stay in that state a long period of time. And that's what people are not recognizing, if they are in that state for a long period of time. And all the symptoms that Sweta talked about, which is, digestive issues, excess muscle tension, anxiety, you get headaches, digestive problems, all kinds of issues come up when you're in sympathetic fight or flight all the time. Cortisol production, you get dysfunctional fat deposition, so how do we recognize it? And then how do we bring ourselves down from it? And that's part of the automatic patterns that I was talking about, because staying in fight or flight is a form of an automatic pattern that people don't know how to break apart. And if they knew how to do that, that would come from the awareness of working with somebody like you, Sweta, where you would help them understand how to interrupt that pattern, how to move beyond that pattern, how to come up with a different way of living, basically, different behaviors.
Yep. Sweta, in the backstory, you talked about grief and how if grief is never acknowledged appropriately, and not just grief from death, but from disappointment or loss of identity or things that we call we don't call it grief, but it feels like grief, right? So how does unacknowledged grief quickly drain the same, at the same level that physical stress does?
So I would say that our nervous system doesn't differentiate, right? It doesn't get whether it's the physical stress or the grief, which is mental or emotional. And grief manifests physiologically and physically as well. But for now, when I'm looking at the differentiator, the nervous system doesn't know the difference. So if it's in that heightened state of survival, it's exactly what Dr. Bob was talking about. You're stuck in that limbo of a sympathetic nervous system where every moment your body thinks it's not safe, so it has to survive. And grief will do that to you. And to your point, Greg, grief can be a response to any kind of loss, right? Oftentimes, people I work with don't even realize they're grieving because they're like, everything is fine. No one is dead. So the minute you use that language, it tells me, oh my God, nothing is fine. Because that's a really heavy statement saying no one is dead. So that's what it is. So the nervous system will again get dysregulated. The sleep issues will happen. And we'll talk about this maybe later, but like from an Ayurvedic perspective, someone might get stressed. Someone feels depressed. Someone is all like fiery, really pouring acid into every relationship that they have. I don't mean literally. I mean, I'm a poet at heart, but they're burning everything along the way. And again, that's coming from a nervous system that just doesn't feel safe. It's just constantly going on and on and on and thinking it needs to either fight, flight, or freeze.
Okay. So, it strikes me, we're not really, sometimes people might look at this, from the burnout, or I'm trapped in grief, or I'm depleting myself, that it's a character flaw. But what we really said here is that it's not really a character flaw. It's our nervous system, which has been trained, drilled away, running in overdrive, plus maybe a cultural belief, especially among high achievers and others, that belief has to be, the belief that rest has to be justified. So then now we start getting, which raises the question is, what can we do and what actually changes this? So that's what we're going to go to in our next section, which is, what to do about it.
So once someone, recognizes that their own signals and they finally understand those signals, what is that change with them?
They're connecting with themselves instead of living in denial. For a lot of people, denial is an armor. I don't need to deal with this. It'll be okay. So when they're there, it'll be ugly at first. And the reason I say that, it's so much easier to numb yourself and be in denial than to actually head on deal with an issue. So there'll be discomfort at first, but then things start to shift because you'll start getting comfortable with the discomfort. The first time you pause, it's like, oh my God, it's the first time people go to a silent retreat, meditation retreat. And they were like, 85% of the darkness was in my brain because I'd been imagining all these situations. It wasn't outside. So once you learn to befriend yourself, you learn to give yourself the love that you deserve, you'll start pouring that into other people. See remember that story of people walking around on eggshells around this person, their family member, a parent, a sibling, an uncle, or a boss. That starts to shift. People start to notice that change and you become more aware. Like, this situation might trigger me, or this phase is really hard. This holiday I can't navigate. You just become more empowered. So yes, it'll feel like, oh my God, what have I become? A negative Nelly? I can't do this. I can't do this. No, it's not that. Things start to become clearer instead of murky. And you're not going through that one other cigarette or one other glass of wine or another slice of cake to just say, I'll navigate it later. And if you are a person who has a family, you're also impacting your immediate family, then your community. So then healing has that cascading effect.
You said in your backstory that you have a go-to reset, even on your busiest days, instead of, like you say, grabbing that other piece of cake. You talked about your breath work, right? So why is something that simple going to have that much effect on your nervous system?
So breath work, for someone who's new to the world of nervous system, that's more even clinical. Even simple things as yoga, right? If you talk to them about breath, that's like almost like the foundation, because the way we think of yoga, and not just in the Western world, in the urban world, anywhere in the world, it's about being bendy. It's about wearing this athletic wear, and it's being on Instagram and taking cool selfies. There's this saying in Sanskrit, which is in the yoga textbook, yoga chitti vitti nirodha, which means yoga is the stilling of mind. And what can still the mind? Telling someone to calm down doesn't calm them down. What we can do is slow down the breathing. So when I exhale is longer than I inhale, that's one simple way. See, I'm doing that now, and this speed at which I'm speaking, it's slowed down. So this is living proof. When your exhales are longer than your inhales, you start tapping into that parasympathetic nervous system, which signals to the body, which signals to the mind, because the mind-body connect and the gut biome connection exists, that it's safe. So the breath work is profound. Even if people have time to do nothing, which I think is almost impossible to believe, but I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. They're super busy. They have no time. You have 5 minutes to focus on your breathing. in a public transport, if you're driving with your first cup of coffee, when you're watching the sunrise, just make sure if you're doing intentional 4 inhales, do 8 exhales, double it down. And that is a simple shift into from fight or flight to rest and digest.
I think you're talking about like 4 seconds inhale, 8 seconds exhale. Is that what you're talking about?
So yeah, it could be, when I say 4 breath, like for some people, like they get very cerebral about, am I inhaling? Is it 1 second? Am I inhaling? Is it 2 seconds? So I always tell them, like, count 4 on your fingertips, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and slower. And then exhale, it's like 8. And if this feels like too much, start with 1 inhale. So your belly is getting bigger. 2 inhale, your belly is getting bigger. And when you exhale, the whole idea is your belly button should touch the spine. So you're going slow. So you're going 4, 3, or just blink your eye. Whatever seems most intuitive and nourishing to you, the choice is yours. But this is like an image itself. When kids, they have like this tantrum, or like you can't calm them down, and parents are getting angry, and I'm not judging anyone, right? It's just human response. Like, I'm tired and now you throwing icy fit. It's almost like when you start breathing with them, it's a tool without them even realizing, and it becomes a family activity. It becomes a habit. I have a client who came to see me, with her parents when this child was 7, had nightmares. Through breathwork and meditation, by the age 9, the nightmare is gone because it wasn't that clinically dark or deep. She just didn't know how to rest. Very typical high achiever, always wanted to be the A+ grades, outperform her own self, not anybody else. Really sweet, incredible child. So it was just tapping into like the breath. And it's so simple, it's accessible, and it's affordable.
Yeah, breathing so far anyway.
Now, you mentioned the breath is foundational to yoga, and you brought that understanding and wisdom into your work and how to work with people there. That made me think back to part of how we introduced you as a trauma-informed yoga person. So what does it really mean to be trauma-informed yoga, and what other kind of principles do you, along like that, bring into your work in helping people deal with the grief and the stress and burnout?
Sure. So with the trauma-informed yoga is different from any other form of yoga in that we just focus on the person connecting to the breath. So when we tell someone, come back to the present moment, it feels like homework. In my case, it feels like math homework. I'm that Indian who doesn't do math, right? So, but like when you tell someone, breathe with me, automatically you come back to the present moment, right? So that's how different trauma yoga is. It's not about the poses. It's not about lavender oil. You don't touch a client. You don't touch a student because you don't know what would trigger them, right? You don't play music. You are not in those Instagram worthy yoga clothes. You in loose fitting t-shirts, and nothing is ever triggering or traumatic to them. The whole goal is doing poses which releases stress, but not working on the lower body, because for a lot of survivors that can be triggering if you're working on the hip, right? If they're sexual assault survivors or domestic violence survivors. So by nature, it's a very compassionate form, and you practice that no matter where you are. You can sit, I teach chair trauma yoga. So, high achievers, middle of the day, oh my God, I have to do this. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did this, because nothing shifted. The other thing, Tim, is the language. Yoga in 2026 in any place in the world can be a competitive athletic form, and that's not what it's meant to be. It's another modality to connect with yourself and feel safe in your body. So I'll always offer options, like if it feels nourishing to you. Instead of saying, try it, you can do this. I'll give you 2 options, choose what works for you. And if neither of them works, you know your body best. So that's a big difference.
So in your work, you have people that are at all different levels of stress, right? And they're dealing with stress differently. So does that mean that their recovery should be different too?
100%. 100%. And this comes in from the Ayurveda perspective, which is an ancient 5,000-year-old medical system from India. And we look at it's an elemental system, just like Chinese medicine. And everyone is made up of doshas, or your bioenergies, and we call it your constitution. Think of it as your DNA blueprint, right? So when we were talking about even grief or stress, some people get anxious, right? Some people might get depressed. Some people get burnt out. So stress looks different on different people. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, then we look at what is the imbalance. If this is the place of balance, and Ayurveda teaches us it takes 6 stages for a disease to be fully blown. how can we correct it in the earlier stages? So you're addressing the doshas. How do we address the imbalances? So absolutely, I love this question, Brad, because it has to be customized, right? But otherwise, it's never one size fits all. And these wellness trends can be very confusing to people because I've had clients who've pretty much hurt themselves unknowingly. And I was like, where did you get this idea that you could do this? Oh, this person on Instagram has 3 million followers. I was like, oh, that's your credibility check. So that's why the customized piece is so important. Like there can't be general. Yes, breath work. Everybody should do breath work, right? But like going back to Tim's question, if someone is a trauma survivor and I ask them to do a breath work that actually triggers them, that actually hits the lower part of their body, that's going to be counterintuitive. And that's why stress relief also needs to be customized.
Now, should a person figure out which type of recovery they need and what describes them? Is there some way that they should self-identify what they need?
Firstly, please invest in your health. That bottle of scotch, that vacation, all of that can wait. My request to anyone, and I'm not saying work with me, I'm just saying invest in your health, right? What also helps is journaling. And again, men are like, I don't journal, I'm a bro. All I'm saying is just write down what you've been feeling. If you've been feeling agitated, have you been feeling anxious? Is that your usual pattern? Just becoming aware. So even if there comes a point where you're like, you know what? This is what I've been feeling. Maybe I need to talk to someone. It makes the practitioner, the doctors, the therapists, and Ayurvedic practitioners work a lot more easier. Yes, I'm going to gauge what is off. But when you tell me these have been your challenges, it could also tell me something is completely off key if you tell me you've never been anxious. And you think it's just a project at work, it could be also a deeper underlying issue, right? So that awareness is key. Like start taking notes on your notes app, and if the patterns keep repeating themselves, it is worthwhile. Remember, longest relationship is with your body. Everything else goes when we go, when it's time for us to leave. If you've had a healthy relationship with your body, you'll enjoy even the last months. I'm not trying to turn morbid. But like people sometimes are like, they don't know how to prioritize. And I used to be one of them. I don't have time for this. How can you not have time for your own self?
Well,
Yeah, so
a lot of people don't think they deserve to have the time for themselves. That's a big underlying subconscious mind issue. Do they really deserve it? Are they worthy of it? That's a problem for a lot of people.
Right. And it's also because we, again, have been relying on external noise to tell us about our worthiness. We are so afraid to connect with what we need or feel because we know it's not just your body or mind telling you need rest. It's also telling you things you need to work on. So you can't have both, right?
I like your message for men, especially about, if you don't feel anything, just write that down. I don't know how to feel anything because that's what I had to do after playing college football. It's like, I got to figure out how to get feelings back into my being, because I can run full speed into a brick wall and bounce off and say, nah, it's all right. I I didn't really feel that, so I think if men would just start out there, like, I don't know how to feel, or I don't know what I'm feeling, and just spend a few minutes with themselves every now and then and journal that and then work from there. Or say, I don't know how to feel anything and I would love to learn how to feel something. So I'm going to focus on learning how to feel, just keep writing and see what happens. Right?
I absolutely love that. I've actually had a client who, when he went through burnout and reached out to his other male friends, they offered him a beer and said, it'll get better. So I don't think they meant any harm. I truly believe that's how men have been trained. And it goes back to your point, Dr. Bob, like we've just never been told you're worthy of rest. We've never been told you're worthy of the love that you give others.
So if we take someone who just starting out and they say, oh, all I have is 20 minutes, or I'm just going to give myself 20 minutes to try this stuff. So as we work to build this awareness, to start laying the foundation, what we tell them to do in that 20 minutes?
So I would tell them, firstly, congratulations. You're carving out 20 minutes in a very busy life. Not to burden themselves, like break it down. Because if you've never taken out time for yourself, 20 minutes, it's nothing. But for a newbie, it can feel very overwhelming. So I would say, you know what? When you wake up for 5 minutes in the morning, just do the breathing. That inhale for 4, exhale for 8, right? During the day, between your lunch and your next thing, can you just pause for 10 minutes and just walk instead of getting that third cup of coffee, right? And the last 5 minutes, end of the day, going back to what we were talking about earlier, can you just write down how you're feeling, what your day was about. Or I love what Dr. Bob said. Let's not make an assumption you're feeling something. It's okay to not feel anything, right? Unless it becomes a problem, but we don't know if it's a problem if we don't have any record or data to go look at. So just write what this was about. And then when you realize, when you start to do that, it becomes sacred, that practice. You'll do it on airplanes. You'll do it, hopefully not while you're driving, not making notes. But, there's the voice app, the dictate on Word. Like, there are ways to be creative, but just say 5 minutes start of the day, 5 minutes end of the day, 10 minutes in the middle of the day. And when you start to hold space for yourself, you become patient. You'll notice you're holding that space for your colleagues. You'll encourage your team to say, take those 10 minutes. So we start responding instead of reacting. Again, it's like that domino effect. One thing leads to another good thing.
Yeah. And so I appreciate that. That was a beautiful response. It surprised me what you said. And then number two was perfect. It gets back to you. Now, that was your approach. I would say, dang, you only got 20 minutes. Come on. Is this important? What are you doing? What's this 20-minute crap that you got? No, it was a beautiful, unexpected response that you had there, Sweta. So Bob, I'm gonna challenge you to contribute, add on, and be complimentary to what Sweta said there. If you had a habit you think would benefit almost anyone tried to build this awareness, what would you advocate?
Well, I like the breathing is so important. So the inhale for 4 and exhale for 8 is just do that. Actually, just one of those done well, that can totally transform somebody immediately. And that's what I tell people. It doesn't take, you don't have to be there for 20 minutes breathing and breathing and breathing. You may want to do more than one at first, but it's the single breath and the intention of calming down, which is so important. And people can learn that and they can get really good at that. It's just getting in touch with oneself. Just even spending 5 minutes in quiet is just really important. I'm not a big fan of journaling only because I've been resisting that, but I know how important it is. And I coach people on that. I should be doing it myself. So, Sweta, I'm going to take it on. I'm going to start journaling. So anyway, you got to figure out what these automatic habits and patterns are and thought processes and things that we're doing to keep us in fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system activation, and figure out how to just interrupt that. And the breathing is fantastic. And being with oneself for 5 minutes, walking for 10 minutes, that's perfect. Especially first thing in the morning. Get up, get some sunlight, and get outside, no matter how cold it is. Just even if it's for 2 minutes, just do it.
Now I'm going to ask you I think is one of the most difficult questions to answer and to get people to do, which is, we've talked about, all the challenges and what it puts on you from whether it's the grief and burnout and the stress and what it does to your nervous system and all those great things and how to be aware of first thing to do with it. And then you gave them a beautiful part about if you got 20 minutes to start with, what do you do and how do you build this? Now the question becomes, so often people like Bob, who just, like you said, say, okay, I know I should do this journaling, but I don't do it. How do you encourage people to actually get themselves ready and to actually do the work and to put in the work, speaking?
Sure. So Dr. Bob, you have a friend. I don't journal either. I tell my clients to do it. I'm a writer. And when I write, I want to be paid for it. It's as simple. So I write for magazines. So for me, if I'm writing, I'm pitching, right? But what I do is I call it brain dump. If something is bothering me, I might not type it, but I am writing it on the phone or there's a voice note. And I rephrased him to answer your question. Like, especially working with men, like, I don't journal, and someone might be a typical alpha might be offended. What are you talking about journaling? I'm like, do you do brain dump? So changing the language, everything is about the language. And then they become more open. And I tell them, I'm not tricking you because I do the same thing. If you tell me to journal, I'm like, no, I want to be paid for my article. But when I do a brain dump, it's very helpful. And in that, it could also be like, write a memo if something is bothering you at work, right? Or write on your phone and just simple phone app, your notes app, right? Or write an email. And it's just, so what that does is you're not fretting about it. You're not fuming about it. You've taken that energy literally and put it in something else.
That's a good example in the journaling. Well, let's take the breathing. You say, hey, I want you to wake up and spend 5 minutes doing this breathing I've talked about. And people say, yeah, I should know that. And yeah, I'll do it. How do you get them to actually take the first step of doing it?
So I'll tell them, just make a mental note. If you don't want to make a physical note of why you reached out to me today. And just give me 1 week. If you do the breathing, nothing changes, don't do it. Let me know. So you're here and you should be so proud that you've actually honored your well-being and, you being an advocate for yourself. So that's kudos to you. And so there's no shame in saying breathing didn't work for me, but it's science, it's wisdom, it's healing, it's your breath. And it's just once it starts to work and you realize, oh my God, I was not bouncing off the walls. I really wanted to punch this person, but I was like, nah, not worth it. It's this.
I'll take a breath instead. I'll take a
Yes, I'll
breath.
think of breath instead. Or even in that moment, can I go back to my breathing? Can I just connect with myself? So the language would be different for each person depending on the job that they have, their personal situation. But it's always giving them an option. Like, can you just give me 1 week? It's not a lifelong commitment.
I like
Like,
that.
right? You've done this for so many years. You felt something was off. I'm not judging you. And if you think something is off, can we do a little bit of recalibration? And if it doesn't work, I'll meet you midway. We'll try something else. But then I know this works.
Now, so where can people find your books and how can people reach you if they want to have a deeper discussion or conversation, Sweta?
So my first name, last name.com. Everything is on there. Sweta Vikram, my website. You can book a discovery call. You can learn about all the work that I do, the kind of grief coaching, Ayurvedic coaching, my books. If you want to familiarize yourself with concepts of Ayurveda, that's in there. Everything is out there. And my 15th book comes out next year in April, and it's all about stress management using holistic tips for high achievers. And it's called Rhythms of Resilience.
Wow. Looking
Nice.
forward to that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest today. And today we learned that awareness isn't a personal trait. It's actually a skill that anyone can build. And whether you're carrying something that shows up as stress, grief, burnout, poor digestion, disrupted sleep, or strain on a relationship, the starting point is the same. You got to notice it first and then take it seriously before life makes you. And start with your breathing, like the examples that we've been talking about here. Learn your own balance, and your body is talking to you every day. And the earlier that you learn its language, the less often life has to get your attention through some kind of a crisis. So if today's conversation resonated with you, and this is really just the starting point, Sveta's full approach goes much deeper, and we'll leave some of those examples in today's show notes for you. Please subscribe to the Wellness Wave Club YouTube channel. And always remember, everyone, wellness, it's in you.